Good morning, everybody. I don't know about you, but I've got goosebumps and chills. That was so incredibly inspiring. And to know that the generation that's going to end tobacco use is active and out there, doing their good work. So, hello, welcome to the UC Merced Nicotine and Cannabis Policy Center's webinar on building youth coalitions and engaging youth. It is great to see all of you. We've got representation all across the state, some people from across the United States as well as internationally. So welcome. This is going to be a pretty quick-paced webinar with tons of information. We're here today because we've got an epidemic on our hands, in addition to the pandemic of COVID-19. But we've got youth who are exposed, vulnerable to tobacco use, cannabis use, vaping, and the downstream effects on their health in the immediate sense as well as long-term. And as we saw in this video, the key is really engaging youth, building these coalitions and arming them with science, so that they can impact our communities and reshape the future for us and them as well. So as we begin today, I want to introduce to you our keynote speaker. I smile because she's really one of my favorite people in the whole world. Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Felsher from Stanford University is here joining us on this webinar. Dr. Halpern-Felsher is a developmental psychologist, and she is an international expert on youth risk behaviors. Her work has focused on tobacco, cannabis, vaping, risky driving, sex behaviors. She's basically known as the expert on adolescent and young adult decision-making. Dr. Halpern-Felsher is a co-principal investigator on a NIH FDA longitudinal study looking at adolescent and young adult perceptions about tobacco use. She's also the founder and director of the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit and the Cannabis Awareness Prevention Toolkit that is adopted and currently used all across the country. I say she's one of my favorite people because she was my postdoc advisor. I call her my academic mom. And I can confidently 100% say that I would not be here with you today had it not been for her influence, her mentorship, and her being an incredible scientist. So on that note, please join me for a warm welcome to Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Felsher.
Thank you, Anna. That is such a sweet intro. And I know I am your academic mom, and we joke that some of your grad students who are now working with me are my academic grandkids. So I'm getting old. It's really sad. Well, I'm excited to be here. If I can share my slides, please. Thank you. Let's see if I can get this to go without any glitches. All right, fantastic. Everyone see my slides? Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here and honored to be asked to be your speaker today. I really am going to give you a background on some of the latest data and products and health effects around both cannabis and nicotine, and to allow you to be able to better translate some of the work into your youth engagement and prevention programs. So let's first talk about, and this is going to be an overview, very fast talk, because there's a lot of information in a short period of time. So products and rates, let's first talk about that. Well, you're probably aware. The good news is what we're seeing on the left, which is cigarette use in the last decade or decade and a half has gone down dramatically, especially amongst youth. In the last couple of years, we're seeing rates across the country and in California below 10%. That's great. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick more recently, but overall, cigarette use has gone down. That's great. What's not so great is what we see on the right, and that is the sharp increase in adolescent vaping or e cigarette use. And you'll see in 2019, the rates were almost 28% of high school students reported using some form of an e-cigarette in the past 30 days. That represented a 78% increase in e-cigarette use or vaping amongst high school students. And by the way, a 48% increase over a year in middle school student use. Very, very high rates of use. Now, the more recent data, 2019, by the way, for YRBS, Youth Risk Behavior Survey, also showed almost 33% of youth reporting e-cigarette use. And you can see there the numbers for cigarettes, cigars, and smokeless tobacco were lower. I will say, however, that it does depend on the community. We do know that cigars and smokeless tobacco are used more often in certain communities, and particularly rural communities. We're also seeing an uptick in smokeless tobacco use. Now, the National Youth Tobacco Survey, I showed you in the previous slide, the 2019 and prior data, the most recent data in 2020 that they were collected from January to March of 2020 actually showed that the numbers of youth who are using an e-cigarette may have gone down slightly to about 20%. But let me put this in context. That's still 3 million youth in 2020 reporting having used an e-cigarette in the past 30 days. And 4.7, almost half a million youth are of middle school students. That's still a lot of people. Plus, those numbers are the same that we saw in 2018 when the Surgeon General and the then FDA commissioner said that we have an epidemic, a vaping epidemic on our hands. So we're still very concerned about use. And if you look at daily use, we're seeing almost 23%. And amongst those who've used 20 of the last 30 days, it's just astronomical numbers. So we're seeing a lot of youth who are using frequently and who are highly addicted, and that's a problem. So when we're talking about tobacco and some of the products, you're probably familiar with them. I'm showing them here. We have everything from the e-cigarettes, but also, can't forget smokeless tobacco, hookah. We still are seeing youth using hookah, and again, cigars and cigarillos. So let's look at the numbers for cannabis. If we look at the 2019 Monitoring the Future, which often asks about marijuana use, you'll see here that and for any time ever used marijuana in their entire life, 15% of eighth graders and 43.7, almost 44% of 12th graders are using marijuana at least once in their life. In the past year, a little bit lower numbers, but still very high. Now, if you look at past month, 22% for the 12th graders and daily use 6%. So we still have a lot of youth who are using cannabis or marijuana. Now, what's important and part of why I'm talking about vaping, both marijuana and vaping, vaping, marijuana, and nicotine today is that there's a lot of co-use going on. So some of the recent data show that about 33% of high school students who have ever used an e-cigarette reported also using marijuana in that e-cigarette. And that's true for 23% of middle school students. Youth who use an e-cigarette or vape are 3.5 times more likely to use marijuana. So we see a lot of co-use going on overall, and particularly around vaping. And look, you can just do a quick Google search, and teens know this better than we adults do. And you can figure out how to open up your drawer, how to open up your e-cigarette, your nicotine e-cigarette, and add marijuana to it. So what are some of the marijuana or cannabis products we're talking about? Well, you can see them here. What I want to point out is, we've got the traditional cigars and cigarette forms of cannabis in the bottom, if you can see my cursor here. Now, what teens don't understand is, first of all, they feel the effects of the cannabis fairly quickly in about 2 or 3 minutes, could even be 30 seconds in. But what they don't realize is that a lot of times they're putting the cannabis into a blunt, which is basically a cigar wrapper, or even into a tobacco wrapper, and they're getting a double whammy. They're getting both the effects from the cannabis, but also from the nicotine. And they don't realize that they're actually becoming addicted to the nicotine that's in the wrapper. I also want to mention that we have to really focus on is, we see at the top the fudge brownies, the edibles. These are a problem. You're not going to get inhalation issues like you will, of course, with smoking cannabis or nicotine. But teens don't realize the dosing. They don't realize that it just takes one piece, that usually like a chocolate bar style, it's one bite or one square is enough to get them high, and that's all they need. That's a dose. And when you're using an edible, it takes about 20 minutes to get into your system before you feel it. So a lot of times teens, and by the way, adults too, will start using these products and go, "Oh, I don't feel anything. When I smoke it, I feel it right away. I don't feel anything when I'm eating it. So I must need more." And by the time they're using a whole bunch and the 20 minutes is up, they're feeling very sick. And we see a lot of young people coming to the emergency room because they are sick and throwing up and having issues with overdoing it, not overdosing, they're not going to die, but very sick from basically using too much of the edible. And then on the far left, this is dabbing. This is highly, highly concentrated THC, the psychoactive component in cannabis. And this can be 80% the concentration that we'd see in other cannabis products. Dabbing is the other thing that youth are using and then inhaling and also going to the emergency room. So when we're talking to youth, it's really important that we use the right terms. And the youth can tell you this better than I can. We may say cannabis, some people say marijuana, but look at all of the other terms. When I ask my young adult kids, or I ask other teens I work with, and I'll say, cannabis or marijuana, and they go, "Dr. Bonnie, that's so old. We don't call it that." They don't even necessarily call it pot. I hear things like tree or broccoli or Mary Jane or MJ. So just being aware of the terms that youth are using is super important when we're going to talk to them. So, what's in some of these products that we need to be aware of? Well, first of all, e cigarettes have a tremendous number of constituents or chemicals in them. Now, some of them are directly in the e cigarette or the pod, and some of them are the byproduct from heating and burning, well, heating these. So, things like propylene glycol and glycerin, those are newer in new e cigarette products, but formaldehyde and lead and cadmium and some of these other things, we've been talking about this. I've been doing tobacco control work for 25 years. We were talking about those chemicals then. So these products, these e-cigarettes are not safe and have a lot of the same ingredients that we would see in a cigarette. The other thing is the tremendous amount of nicotine that's in these products. So you probably know a pack of cigarettes has 20 cigarettes. You may not realize that each cigarette has about 8 milligrams of nicotine. But if you're a smoker, you don't actually take in the yield, it's called, a full 8 milligrams from a cigarette. You may take in more like 1 to 1.5 because it goes on the floor, in the air, in your finger, in the ashtray. So if you think about it, a a pack of cigarettes is about 20 cigarettes, about 20 milligrams of nicotine. The Juul pod has 41 milligrams of nicotine. Jewel brags, or used to, they took it off their website, but brags that you can get about 80+% of the ingredients into your body. So if you're thinking about it, a Juul pod has anywhere from 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes worth of nicotine. That's a huge amount of nicotine. Puff Bar, the latest product that we're seeing a lot of youth using, is closer to 50 cigarettes, and a Soren, because it's more volume, 90. So it's important to know that all of the more recent e-cigarette products, the pods and the disposables, have a tremendous amount of nicotine in them. Not only that, they have what's called a salt-based nicotine. Salt-based nicotine, as opposed to a free base, which is the older e-cigarettes or cigarettes, which uses sugar and ammonia to basically bind to and bring the nicotine into your body and into your brain. The newer ones have salt or benzoic acid. It basically changes the pH level, makes it less harsh, less throat hit. So teens will say, "I like it. It doesn't make me cough. It feels good." That's all important to know because that's part of why teens are using them more than ever. We have teens who are using these products 24/7. It's the first product, nicotine product, they can use all the time. It doesn't burn, it doesn't explode, these newer products, and they just wake up in the middle of the night and use it. I have teens who are addicted say, "I'm using anywhere from 1 to 2 to 4 pods a day." That is 1 to 8 packs of cigarettes worth of nicotine. All right. THC, we're also really concerned. We say it's not your grandma's THC anymore. It's not my generation's THC. It is about 10 times stronger than the amount of THC that's in one cigarette or THC marijuana cigarette, 10 times higher than it used to be. And then again, if you're looking at dabbing or the waxes, it can be 80% for the THC concentration. Huge concern there. So why else are we concerned if I haven't convinced you? So one has to do with the brain. Teens' brains develop until they're in their 20s. So I always talk to teens, and for you, when you're talking to young people, that's great. It's why those videos are so great. It's why young people are so creative. There's so much good about their brains developing. But it also means the brain is looking for cues. What synapses, what neuronal connections do I keep? What do I not keep? We're born with nicotine receptors. We're born with the ability to become addicted. If we introduce nicotine or THC into our body before our brains are done developing, the brain says, "Ooh, I should keep this receptor." And so it keeps it and wants to be filled with more. And that's the addictive process. But if we don't use it, it sort of lies dormant. We don't use it, we don't need it. So that's important to realize. That's why the industry targets young people. We also know that nicotine makes the heart beat faster. And then let's talk about the lungs. That's obviously important right now. So we know that e cigarettes do have an effect on the lungs. E cigarettes by themselves and nicotine. But I also want to tell you flavorings do, and not everybody realizes that. The flavorants, diacetyl, which is the buttery flavor that's in popcorn, or vanilla flavored, or cinnamon flavor. Those are in these products, and those can cause lung damage. And we've seen that. We've seen young people present with lung damage and collapsing lungs. That's important. So you can eat these flavors, but heating them to 3, 4, 5, 600 degrees, like what happens in an e-cigarette, and then inhaling the aerosol, that's the problem there. Smoking in COVID and vaping, and we may see this with THC, but nobody's really looked at it yet. We know that smoking and vaping hurt the lungs. The coronavirus also hurts the lungs. So it stands to reason, and the research isn't great yet, but there is some evidence that if you are a smoker or vapor, you're more likely to get COVID. You're also more likely to get sick or hospitalized from it. Now, it may be because of the ingredients in it. We actually published a study on this, the relationship between vaping and COVID. We think it may also just be hand to mouth, where young people are sharing their vaping products. You take your mask off, whatever it is, you're exposing yourself. And that's one way to talk to youth. Now's the time to say, we need to take care of your lungs, not just your brain. And you know what? Lungs continue to develop until your 20s as well. So let's talk about lung health as well. All right. So cannabis isn't that different. We also see cannabis alters your brain, increases your heart rate, causes lung problem, and also something called hyperemesis, where we know that young people are using too much cannabis and showing up to the emergency room because they're vomiting so much. There's vapor-related lung illness. As of February 2020, unfortunately, the CDC stopped keeping numbers on it, but we saw a lot of young people getting sick from vaping. We think it's THC or the vitamin E acetate, but there are also some young people getting very sick just from the nicotine e-cigarettes. So again, lung health. So why do young people use? Well, first of all, we know that they use because of the flavors. The National Youth Tobacco Survey showed that over 87%, although we saw in the video, some teens are saying 92%, whatever it is, most teens are starting e-cigarettes because of the flavors, the fruit, and by the way, the mint and menthol are also really important to realize. Young people like it. Teens tell me, well, of course I like it. I like gum, so of course I like mint and menthol. So some of the flavors, just to show you here, and think in your mind, how many flavors are there in e-cigarettes? These are some of the flavors. There are over 15,000 unique flavors. Now, when you talk to the tobacco industry and e-cigarette industry, they'll say, "Oh, come on, we need the flavors to help adults quit smoking." Well, first of all, there's not good evidence that e-cigarettes help adults quit smoking. We can talk about that another time. But regardless, Adults don't need sugar booger, honey doo doo, unicorn poop, dragon's blood. Those are teen flavors. And if you look at these pictures, these are advertising to our young people. Get a lot of people also say, well, teens don't use mint and menthol. Look at this is trash collected in a school a couple years ago. They are using mint and menthol. These are mint and menthol vapes. The other is it's really hard to find. I'm going to speed through this because of time, but these products are so easy to hide, and young people know that. You can see how small they are. The other has to do with youth ads. These ads are cool and they're attracting young people. I'm a middle-aged woman. I don't have my hair up on a ponytail and a Letterman jacket and my belly showing. Oh gosh, no, I don't do that. These are for young people. And then the packaging, it's not clear. It says 5%, 1.6%. What does that actually mean? 4 pods, 5%. These packaging are made to confuse adults and kids so you don't realize how much nicotine is in these products. So we see the flavors in cannabis too, sneakers and Nutella and all these things. It's not just in e-cigarettes or tobacco. The flavors in the cannabis are also attracting our young people. We can see here very much advertising cannabis to look like everyday household flavors that young people love. The other problem is access and discounts. When it says student discount, this is a real picture. In California, hopefully you know, the legal age to purchase both marijuana and tobacco is 21. The majority of students are under 21. So when you say local discounts and student discounts, this is attracting our young people. And vape shops are not identifying and doing age verifications. By the way, nor is online. So we got a big problem. The other is that adolescents really perceive e-cigarettes to be less risky and they don't understand that it's addictive. And this is another problem that we need to do is to help young people and youth. We need you to help us get the word out that these are not just harmless water vapor or flavored water. And then finally, stress. Youth are using these drugs, cannabis, tobacco, because they're stressed. And by the way, particularly now, they're really stressed and they think that these products help. So we need to have youth partner with us and to be able to, in our youth group, I'll show you a picture at the end, creative videos to help young people know what else you can do when you're stressed rather than pick up a drug. So what can you do? Stay informed, talk to youth, partner with youth, be an advocate, talk to the professionals, include youth, and talk to youth. I don't have talked to youth twice by accident. I really mean that. I want to emphasize we need youth to be partners in everything that we are doing here. So I want to end with some resources. I know you've got a lot from the NCPC, a fantastic place to go. I want to add a few more that you may know about. Resources, a lot of texting resources to help young people quit. And then I want to show you quickly a couple of the resources we have that you may know about. Our tobacco prevention toolkit. This toolkit has a lot of different activities and curriculums around all forms of tobacco, with a large part, of course, on e-cigarettes that you can use. It's free, it's online, and we do free trainings, and we're happy to come out or via Zoom and do some trainings for you. We also have a similar cannabis awareness and prevention toolkit that is similarly very popular. These toolkits have reached almost 1.8 million kids across the country. And both toolkits offer new remote learning curriculum. So if you're still not in person and you want something that you can just give to your students, we've got that. And these were all created with the youth voice. So I want to show you our youth action board, which is coordinated and directed by Dr. Marcia Zaria in my lab. And this is a very diverse, wonderful group of 13 to 22-year-olds who advise us on everything that we do. Whew, I made it in 20 minutes. Want to thank you so much. Here's my email. Oh, I do want to mention, we also have a cannabis conference coming up, a 2-day conference. It is, we are charging a fee because it's a 2-day. We have 40 workshops going on. So we do have some expenses, but you can use 2 paid dollars. And then we also can give some scholarships. And then we also have a free youth-led environmental conference called Nicotine versus Nature. So if you're interested, email me and I can get you that information. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic, and I can't believe you got all that information in 20 minutes. That's fantastic. So a warm online applause for Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Felsher. So at this point, I'd like to present some questions, and I want to thank our community partner and co-sponsor for this webinar, the American Heart Association. And we've got some experts from the AHA who are monitoring the chat room and boards. Ooh, thank you, Juliet, for sending this over. So we do have a question here. Let me minimize my screen here so I can read this for you. Okay, so we have a question here from the chat room. Do you think that parents that are facing this problem at home should use a direct approach to talk to their children, or what do you suggest?
So it's a great question. I always suggest go to, when you're at a talk like this, don't directly ask teens, are you vaping? Or are you smoking or using marijuana? It's a really hard question for young people to answer. And please don't say you're not using, right? Because what are they going to say? No, actually, mom, I am. Talk to them. I just heard a talk, or I just went to a website, and I went to the NCPC website. I went to the Tobacco Toolkit website and went and heard a talk. And this is what I learned. And I'd love to ask questions and tell you what I learned and what do you know, and let the conversation be organic and have a safe place. Look, I'm a parent of two now young adult daughters, but when they were young, we never want to find out that our kids are doing things that are risky, but we need to create a safe space to say, if you are, that's okay. I need to now help you, and I'm not going to get mad. Let's move you towards quit. So leaning towards that and saying it's a safe space to your friends use. If you ever are, I want you to know that you can come to me, and you may not find out that they're using on that first conversation. It may take a few.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, and I do want to remind you that there will be some additional time to ask questions throughout the rest of the program. But one last question from a guest who's been teaching smoking cessation classes for adults for over 25 years. The question is, how might this be different in facilitating youth classes?
I'm not sure in what way, but I don't think it would be that different. Trying to explain to, when we do cessation, we also talk to them, yes, about the health, but also you've been duped, you've been targeted by the marketing, by the ads, by the flavors, by the misinformation. So I think a lot of how we talk to young people, whether we're talking about prevention or cessation, can use a lot of the same messages, and a lot of the motivational interviewing and the I messages, I think, would be pretty similar. And that's how we do it in our toolkit, both not cessation, but alternative to suspension and moving people towards quit.
And then I'm going to, I'm going to defer to my American Heart Association colleagues. Do we have time for one more question?
Yes, we could squeeze one more in. Anna, go for it.
Okay, great. We have one other question here, and it seems that there's an idea that youth really don't think about the health consequences and the future and whatnot. So how might we, frame this information so that youth will believe it, understand, or consider it?
So it's interesting. In brief, teens actually do want the information, and they do want the health information. It's interesting because the science will say don't scare them, and that health effects and knowledge doesn't translate to changes in behavior. But these are new products, and so teens actually do want information on this. And what I hear teens tell us, and we actually published a paper on this from a qualitative study, is if you don't talk to us about it, we assume it's okay. So we do need to give them information, but don't just do that, also explain some of the other issues about them being targets, and get them to be angry and to become the advocates against using it. So we do need to do that. But it is true, they don't care about lung cancer in 40 years. They care about right now. So picking up on bad breath, or picking up on, I always say you can't run as well if you're vaping. Those kinds of things, the here and now, are definitely messages that we can give them.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I know now there are some questions rolling in, some more questions, but I'm going to remind you, we will try to get to those questions, maybe put it in the Q&A button. And so we might be able to answer some of those questions in text format, and there'll be some other opportunities to ask questions throughout the rest of the workshop. So on that note, again, thank you so much, Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Felsher and our panelists, and I'm going to turn the show over to you.
Well, thank you, Anna. So now we're going to excitedly transition over to our first panel of experts who will have great experience in working with youth, and that is the theme of this. So, but before we do that, I want to hear from you. That's important. So we have a poll on what challenges you may be experiencing while trying to work with youth. So if we can have that poll, please. Is that coming up? All right, great. So the question is, what is the biggest barrier to engaging youth in tobacco work? So if you can all please answer that, we would really appreciate it. Fantastic. All right, great. So it seems like the biggest barrier has to do with reaching out to youth under 18, especially in a virtual environment. I totally agree. And actually, it's great because the panels we're going to have will talk about it. But we also do see negative peer pressure and competing youth priorities. Absolutely is important. So thank you so much for that. And that's great. That also gives us some information about what we should be doing in thinking about in the poll, in the panels that we're going to have. So I want to go ahead and introduce our first panel, and this will be focused on establishing and growing youth coalitions. So first, we're going to begin with opening remarks from each of the panelists, and then we'll have a discussion with questions, and then questions from our participants as well. So our first panelist is Eric Rangel. Eric is the program coordinator for California Health Collaborative's REACT program, the Regional Advocates Countering Tobacco REACT program implements a tri-county tobacco control plan aimed at reducing and preventing tobacco use and decreasing exposure to secondhand smoke and tobacco products in the counties of Tulare, Kings, and Fresno. Eric and his team work directly with youth and young adults to increase their participation in tobacco control efforts through authentic engagement and advocacy activities in the tri-county region. So Eric, I'll turn it over to you for 3 minutes, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction, and hello, everyone. My name is Eric Rangel, pronouns he, him, and él, project manager with the California Health Collaborative Regional Advocates Countering Tobacco Program, of course. REACT operates at a tri-county level to provide opportunities for youth and young adults to mobilize and lead tobacco advocacy activities in their respective communities. And we do this by amplifying young voices as they seek policy systems and environmental change for generations of youth in the Central Valley. Together, we are committed to challenging the narratives of youth involvement in decision-making, which very often overlook young people because of the assumption that they lack the knowledge and experience to make informed decisions and contributions. But time after time, we have witnessed young voices demonstrate their commitment to leadership and advocacy by organizing and providing recommendations for an equitable society. Their engagement in these processes is truly a testament that true leadership has no age requirement. Youth really want to be seen, they want to be heard, and most importantly, they want to be treated as equals. They are interested in engaging in conversations with their peers and adults about current issues and how those issues impact their community. But most importantly, they want to be asked to find solutions to those issues. If we change the current dialogue from let's talk about the problem to how can you contribute to a solution, youth will engage in conversations, voicing their thoughts and opinions to ultimately provide creative and innovative solutions. Some of our most engagement, recruitment, and advocacy events have been youth-led and centered around discussion on tobacco as a social and environmental justice issue. This youth-led approach provides youth with the autonomy to plan and lead events in their communities, shifting our coalition efforts from participation to engagement, which there's a big difference between those two. As youth enter new spaces, they often experience feelings of imposter syndrome because of false narratives surrounding youth involvement in decision-making. These feelings may stem from not feeling represented or seeing representation of their own in leadership roles. So as adult allies, our work should be focused on increasing visibility of these priority populations, and most importantly, equipping our youth with the tools to realize that they are the representation for others. As a young professional myself, I have been in decision-making spaces in which I am often the youngest person at the table. I share some of the same feelings of not belonging like our youth in these spaces. So I think it's important to open up about our vulnerability so that they see us as humans first and understand that they are not alone. By engaging in real life, real-time conversations, we are growing together in an environment that fosters inclusion and promotes safety. Our coalition members have expressed seeking inclusive and safe spaces when thinking about joining a club, organization, group, or any type of coalition. So we believe it is one of the main factors why youth decide to first come and attend the first meeting and return meeting after meeting moving forward. Overall, I think it's important to understand that each coalition member comes from different walks of life and can contribute unique perspectives, talents, and lived experiences, which are fundamental to build, strengthen, and expand a coalition. And thank you for listening to that talk.
Well, thank you, Eric. That was fantastic. Now we're going to turn to Yasmin Gallegos, and Yasmin is a health educator at the Madera County Public Health. She's the point person for the Students Working Against Tobacco, also called SWAT, Youth Coalition, created by and for Madera County youth to lead the movement against tobacco use. Since its inception in January 2019, SWAT have been actively addressing tobacco control as issues affecting their community through outreach, policy change, and service. Please, Yasmin, go ahead for your introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, and hello, everyone. As we started our youth coalition in 2018, we hit the ground running, and it was a little difficult because Madera County was one of those counties that did not receive the 2P funds, and so it made it difficult. But through our partnership and collaboration with Madera Unified School District, but also the surrounding cities, we were able to, be available and present during lunch hours and after school, and just kind of tap into the programs that are offered through the school already. So for an example, the HOSA program, which is the Health Occupation Students of America, we reached out to the teachers and were able to have some virtual trainings and presentations and things like that. And so students who were interested were able to join, and we try to make everything as friendly as possible, or even just to I guess, to kind of adapt to the youth demographic and making virtual applications and things of interest. Um, and so, and just as an incentive for some of these students who were interested in joining and wanting to make a change in the community, we wanted to meet their needs as well. So a part of the HOSA program, they had to complete so many community service hours. And so we were able to do things like cleanups in the parks and things like that. And so they were able to receive their community service hours. We also provided letters of recommendation. We assisted with the senior programs and things that they had to complete, for their schools and programs. So the legacy program is what it's called for our seniors in Madera. Also their HOSA projects. We really wanted to be a resource for them. And just from our partnership and collaboration and even the school staff seeing, what we were doing and how we were making changes. And once we passed a smoke-free park policy, we really got the recognition. And so through the school, they have made us a club on campus, which is great because when these new, freshmen, sophomore, junior, and seniors, when they receive that packet at the beginning of the school year, and they are eager to join as many clubs as possible, we are considered one of the health clubs. And so that is kind of how we geared up and we're able to start our youth coalition. And again, it's the partnership and collaboration. And I believe that is all that I have. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Yasmin. That was fantastic. Great. So finally, we're going to hear from our third panelist of this session, Daisy Lopez, as Senior Director for Program Services at the California Health Collaborative. Daisy has valuable experience in directing several diverse teams towards improving the health and well-being of underserved and underrepresented populations, throughout 7 counties of the Central Valley. Daisy and her team lead efforts that engage youth in creating community social norm change that improves the quality of life of diverse populations and also reduces health disparities in the Central Valley. Daisy, please, for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Daisy Lopez. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I have the privilege, as stated, of working for the California Health Collaborative. We're a statewide nonprofit organization that's headquartered in Fresno, and we have several programs that serve the Central Valley. In my role as Senior Director, I have the privilege of working with various projects dedicated to elevating youth voice and engaging youth as authentic partners in policy systems and environmental change efforts. This includes various projects with the goal of building health equity in our communities and advocating for both social and environmental justice. By engaging youth from priority populations. Some of these priority populations include Latinx youth, African American, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and youth residing in rural communities. We believe that young people are the leaders of today and not just tomorrow, and that they bring expertise in their own experiences. If you really stop to consider every successful movement to transform narratives and policies in our nation's history, you'll find that they've been led by young people. So we engage youth as leaders in every youth development project we operate at the California Health Collaborative, because we believe that who better to create sustainable and effective change than young people who have a greater understanding of the challenges and the solutions faced by our communities. So one thing we do is that we try not to measure our success by how many youth are in our coalitions or how many showed up to that training you put together last week, but by how authentically engaged they are in their community efforts. Are they contributing to meaningful decisions and policy campaigns? Do they feel respected by adult leaders? Are they feeling safe enough to share their own views and make decisions alongside your teams? These measurements allow us to see how our engagement efforts are going and where there may be areas for improvement. Over my career in working with youth, I've learned that authentic youth engagement work does take time, but it's so invaluable to our efforts in the community. Young people bring stories, experiences, insights, energy, ideas that are transformative to our work and to our communities. It's worth the time and effort to meet them where they're at, to eliminate barriers to their participation, and to feel just as excited to see them at the table as we do when we see the mayor or the city council member walk in. Because we know that young people have choices on how to spend their time, and honestly, lots of fun things to do after school than just come hang out with me. But choosing to spend it with us and create changes in their community truly excites me. and humbles me, quite frankly, to be better at providing opportunities to do this work fully and authentically at every level of our campaigns. So from planning to decision-making, delivery, implementation, ongoing evaluation, it's important to consider them at all levels of your campaign. So for those of you that haven't started your coalitions, just a suggestion from my experience was just engage a couple youth around you. Invite your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, your coworkers, kids, any young people you come across to be engaged in your efforts. Value them as partners, engage them genuinely, just like you would an adult partner. And I can guarantee you that you'll soon have a coalition starting up because word of mouth travels very quickly.
Great. Thank you so much, Daisy. And thank you to all of you. That was fantastic. Lots of great insights. So if you can, I guess I'll come on camera for a little bit and let's have a conversation. I have some questions. So you all gave a lot of insight about how do you start this coalition and how do you get it going. But I want to drill down and get a little bit very, very detailed on some sort of on the ground thoughts. So one of them is, how do you actually recruit and then make this work in a virtual world to get your youth? How do you recruit the youth, get them going in the virtual world? And then also kind of tandem to that is especially those who are under 18, and how is that working for you? So anybody in particular want to take that question first? Yeah, Yasmin, go for it.
I'll start. And so one of the things that we did in, trial and error, we have, I guess there's a link that you can go on through the Madera County webpage. And as soon as you hit the link and fill out your interest form, it automatically sends us an email. Somebody has submitted an application or an intent to be a part of or know a little more about, what we do, SWAT. And so, and that's, a lot of collaboration and working with, the backside with county staff. But we wanted to make it so easy. We even did like a barcode. And like I said, just, being present and being able to work a little on campus and making our presence known and, discussing and collaborating with the school district and, really the activities director who does a lot of the activities planning on campus. And so just coordinating with them, we try to just make it as easy as possible. And like I said, because we are now recognized as a club on campus, they have our direct contact information about how to inquire, to learn more information about what SWAT is and what SWAT does and how can they be involved. And so when they initiate that contact of information, we let them know what we do. And if you're still interested and want to make, changes in your community and advocate for policies and all that great stuff together, they're able to submit, an additional form. And again, it's a link. It's something you press and it's so easy. It's not a paper form and the likelihood of us receiving that paper form back. So that's just one of the things that we have done.
Great, that's fantastic. What I'm going to do, by the way, is not have each of you answer each question or just in the interest of time. So let me ask either Eric or Daisy if you want to take this, which is more on the barrier side. And you all gave a lot of information, which was fantastic, on different ways that you can work with youth and how they can be a part of what you're doing. And we'll hear a little bit about that more in our next session. But one of the barriers that we often hear, and in our youth group as well, is building the rapport. And one of the, I'll piggyback on one of the questions in the chat too, which is how do you build the rapport and a safe space for trust? And I know for our youth group, one of the things we say is, you can't just sort of use them and dump them. You've got to build the rapport and ask them how they are and, be aware that they're young people and that we can't just be saying, take a look at this and, give us your opinion and we're done, that's not going to build. So how do you start building that trust? What are some of the lessons learned you've developed?
I can take that one, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you hit it right on the nail. It's about incorporating different types of conversations where they feel safe and included. Oftentimes, it helps to share personal stories and experiences about everything that a person has been going through or is experiencing. And in my introduction, I did mention how oftentimes youth in general feel a sense of imposter syndrome coming into spaces that were not really designed for youth their age. So I think it's about empowering them. Once they see that you are there to uplift them and continue to be a supportive mentor to them, that's when we start seeing that they're opening up about really everything. I think when we start switching and giving them the trust to lead events and incorporate some of their creativity through planning and engaging and overall just executing the event, that's when we begin to have them engage more and build that trust going forward. Some of them have opened up about, things that have been going on in their personal lives. And I think it's important to be able to hold space for each other, listen, and really drive a conversation forward about what can be done and really be a supportive person in that moment for them. So that's a little bit of how we've been engaging our youth, and it's been working. Our youth have been really responsive when it comes to wanting to engage in the work and be open about the things that they're doing in their community.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Daisy, why don't I ask you this one? Sort of a couple of part question, and I think it goes along the way with the building the trust. But how do you suggest, and how do you do it in terms of collaboration and guidance for example, staff versus the youth roles? How do you separate those, or do you? Is it a true partnership, so to speak, where you're always working together no matter what, and it's similar, or do you separate those in some ways? And I'll add on job descriptions. Do you have a formal job description of what each of those roles might look like?
That's a great question. I think some of the roles and what we do with our projects, they are similar to each other. So we do allow young people to be involved in, things like helping us to design program ideas, or, coming up with policy suggestions, or what do they think that they want to see happen in their community. So some of those roles are similar in that the adult and the young person have to work in partnership, so that it's authentically, young people are engaged authentically in this process. But one of the things that, we do with our adult staff that are working as adult allies with our young people is that we provide a lot of mentoring, a lot of coaching, and a lot of support for them as well. As Eric is mentioning, that narrative of how young people are engaged in work is something that a lot of us also dealt with when we were young people. We weren't always asked our opinions, or we weren't always, put in a position where we could make decisions. So I think it also is a little bit of unlearning for our adult allies as well. And just, knowing that there's a new way to work with young people, that this is an effective way to work with young people. And it takes some coaching. It takes some coaching to kind of relinquish that power that adults, we feel like we hold, as well as it takes some coaching for some young people to be able to accept that power and own it because it belongs to them. And so we've kind of done some training back and forth between youth and between our adult allies, so that they all feel that they're in the right spaces to be able to say, hey, we're all here to work together. And, as you mentioned, job descriptions, I wouldn't say necessarily like, job descriptions, but one of the things that we do is that when we actually hire our adult allies or our staff that are going to be working with young people, is that sometimes we invite young people to actually sit on interview panels. And we actually do this quite often. And so they get to come and ask questions, and we get to see how adult allies actually respond to the questions and how would they engage with our young people. And we're able to, again, authentically involve young people in decisions about who's going to be working with them as well, and who'll be out in the community with them. So I think some of it involves obviously the training and the support, but I think a lot of it is just young people and adults coming together and being able to make decisions about who wants to take what, who feels responsible for this, who wants to lead these efforts, and having young people and adults make those decisions together.
Great, thank you. Let me ask one more question, and then if we have time before we get to the audience question, I may have you all go around and say one sentence in summary, but let me ask one more question overall, which is expectancies or your expected outcomes. And you kind of touch on this, but if one of you can just quickly answer, what are your expected outcomes of having your youth groups? Somebody want to do that? Go ahead, Daisy. You were the first to open up.
I will go with it. I think if we're talking about program outcomes and the outcomes of our youth coalitions and, you know, what we hope to get from this experience together, I mean, for us is that opportunity to really impact these issues that we're dealing with tobacco, with marijuana, you know, with all these issues that we're approaching with young people, to really have them authentically engaged in the process so that these young people can also lead future efforts, because we know that, you know, we were once working on tobacco and now we're working on e-cigarettes, and there may be future issues that are going to come down the road. And so something that we talk about quite often is, you know, we're not just engaging these young people to deal with the issue right now and this is it. This is us preparing young people and working with them and helping them find their kind of power and their roles in their community so that they can impact future issues as well, whether they're related to tobacco or they're related to any other issues that they're going to be dealing with. So I know that's something that we definitely emphasize in our coalitions, but I'll go ahead and give space to Eric and Jasmine as well.
I think we actually only have a few more minutes, so let's transition over to the audience Q&A, and you can incorporate some of your thoughts in there as well. But there's some great audience questions that have coming through, and I want to make sure we have time for them. So one of them, going back to this virtual idea that we were talking about earlier, is how do you keep your youth coalitions groups meeting in a virtual setting, and how do you keep them engaged when you're not, either when you're not meeting or when you are meeting? How do you do that? So maybe Eric or Yasmin, you can do this one.
Yeah, thank you. I can answer this one. So in regards to how often and keeping them engaged, I like to say within our program that we should be meeting with youth on a constant basis so that it comes off as authentic and we're not reaching out to them just so that we can prepare them for a presentation. It should be, you know, if capacity allows, weekly conversations with youth on what we're doing in the community. And I think oftentimes that involves a lot of hard work and dedication, which again, I will say that it depends on the program capacity, of course. In terms of the different types of engagement, we have really allowed the youth to take control of those activities and tell us what they are interested in learning about and engaging in. We had a recruitment event back in November where the youth really wanted to take advantage of the game Among Us that was really popular a couple months ago. And so we make sure that we incorporate some of the relevant pop culture that they are experiencing, that they're seeing even on TikTok. So I think it's just a matter of meeting their needs and what interests them so that you as together as a coalition can bring forward those issues that really matter to them and to the community as well. There's different ways to do it. Social media, we constantly message back and forth when we're not meeting. So that's also another way. And the different platforms that we use, we not only use Zoom, but there's also other platforms like Backyard that allow for participants to engage in different activities while playing games. So it's a variety. I would say it's definitely a mixture of different things that the person in charge of being with the youth has to really take into account that it is hard work. It's definitely hard work to be constantly designing and implementing different things that the youth are interested to keep them engaged.
Beautiful. All right, we have about 40 seconds left. So I'm going to ask each of you to give literally one sentence summary or, you know, why you're doing this. One sentence. So Yasmin, why don't you go?
To be honest with you, I kind of fell in this work, community work. And so I was really excited and nervous at the same time. And I had no idea how to engage, you know, young people. But as I started to do community work and I got thrown into the youth coalition and starting a youth coalition. And really, when I see these youth, I feel so inspired, so motivated. You know, one of the questions that we ask when they first join, I'm sorry, am I going to?
Yeah, sorry, I was just one sentence.
I'm sorry,
No problem. I mean, Eric and Daisy, we're out of time. So can I have one word? Just one word of like why you're doing this, some word. Eric, one word.
Oh man, I don't have a word, but sentence, youth get it done.
I love it. All right, Daisy.
I'll just say youth thrive when adults listen and respect them.
Beautiful. Thank you. That was perfect. A beautiful ending. Well, thank you so much, panelists. You were amazing for sharing all your experience. And I think that was fantastic. So that's all we have for this section. And my notes back up here. We're going to transition now to our second panel. And during our next segment, we're mostly going to focus on how to keep it all going. So now you have your youth coalition. Now, after that, you've invested all this time and effort. So how do you make it sustainable? How do you make it work for you? So our second panel is going to focus on sustaining youth engagement. And we're once again going to have each of our panelists give 3-minute overview, and then we'll again do the questions and then audience questions. So first up is Cynthia Rocha. Cynthia is the Director of Central Valley Programs for the Fresno Youth Leadership Institute. You probably know it as YLI. Working with young people ages 12 to 24, Cynthia has helped engage and empower youth to lead successful social norms, access, and policy campaigns to tackle the issue of underage and binge drinking, services that she has also had the privilege of training both youth and adults across the state of California and the larger US on evidence-based youth leadership development strategies, which is super important. So Cynthia, please, giving it over to you for 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for that lovely introduction. My pronouns are she, her. I wanted to kind of take this time to share a little bit about sustaining youth engagement, which I think is the question that I'm most frequently asked, like, what is that special sauce that you all use to ensure that young people remain engaged once we've been able to get them through the door and recruited? One of what our evidence shows is that there's 3 main reasons why both young people and adults stay committed to groups, projects they're a part of. When they're given an opportunity to build relationships, to build some kind of skill set, or when they're passionate about an issue. And we all know that sometimes the issue of cannabis, tobacco, alcohol, underage drinking preventions, or substance use prevention isn't like the sexiest topic to our young people. So having them hooked through relationship and skill building is really foundational. So the Youth Leadership Institute has instituted standards of practice that we know work effectively to retaining young people. And this includes ensuring that there is safety in all our meetings, ensuring that young people experience relationship building with both their peers and adult leaders, that there's opportunities for leadership development, there's opportunities for them to be directly engaged in their community, and on top of that, that there's opportunities for them to build skills. I'm going to focus primarily on leadership building, community, and skills, because panelists before really, I think, gave great insight on why safety and relationships is essential for our young people to stay engaged and kind of get their foot in the door and engaging in these coalitions. I know that in a previous panel, somebody asked, how do you do this? We establish safety by giving space for pronouns, making sure we're creating community agreements, as well as our adult allies who are in those spaces to ensure that they're well equipped in order to partner with young people. When it comes to relationship building, we make sure that at the inclusion of every single meeting, that there is activities, check-in questions to ensure that there's constant relationship building opportunities happening. But what's most important is like leadership opportunities. And what we found really helps retain our young people. It's the opportunity for young people to really build their skills, particularly around advocacy, and those skills that they can see translate to other facets of their life. As well as opportunities for growth. Within our organization, we also give opportunities for young people to not just be a participant, but to also level up their leadership by growing their leadership through internships or even future employment with the organization. The way that we ensure that they're visible in the community is by giving them space and creating chairs for them at the tables where decisions are being made. And that's not just bringing young people into the spaces to talk to elected officials, but also bringing young people into a space where they're able to share directly with the community the work that they're doing, either through storytelling or presentations. And lastly, it's skill building and being flexible around this. Young people just don't want to build their skills around how to address or how to engage in the work that you're doing. They want to build a plethora of skills because they're interested in a lot of things. So it's about creating a conversation with young people about mutual learning, what they want to learn and what you as adults want to learn from them, and creating that environment.
Thank
And
you,
so,
Cynthia.
yeah, I'll close it there.
I know 3 minutes is super, super fast. Thank you. And we'll have time for more conversation. That was fabulous though. Thank you. All right, we're going to move to our next panelist, who is Muriel Gobella. She is with the Fresno County Vaping Prevention Project. Muriel studied social work at the Fresno Pacific University and started herself as a youth advocate. She progressed through various leadership roles until landing a staff position working directly with youth in the counties of Fresno, Kings, and Tulare. So Muriel, please take it away. Thank you. Muriel, we're not hearing you. Maybe turn your volume up. No. No, don't hear you. Huh. Earphones or anything in or out? What? Why don't we move on and then we'll come right back and see if you can fix it? Okay, thank you. All right. So, all right, given that, sorry about that. That is, our hashtag COVID times, right? So let's move on to Nicole Morgan of CYAN, and then we'll come back to Muriel, hopefully. So in her current role as youth program coordinator for, love it that my phone rings. She's the youth program coordinator for the California Youth Advocacy Network, or CYAN. Nicole supports young people to advocate for tobacco-free policy and teaches adults best practices for engaging youth in policy change. She received her BA in public health from UC Merced in 2013, and she's pursuing her MPH, Masters of Public Health, at San Jose State. Nicole, please take it away for 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Bonnie. I'm super excited to share with you all today. We have some great panelists on today who are really able to dig into what this work looks like on the local level. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to pass on to you all today, I thought I want to talk about working to ensure that your organizational structure promotes retaining a youth coalition. Because as youth coordinators, we of course individually value working with youth. But as long as the broader organizational structures that we function within aren't set up to promote youth engagement, that's going to continue to be a barrier to youth work. So one thing that's really important is to make sure that management and whoever your organizational decision makers are on board with youth engagement. You know who those people are. Whoever it is that things don't start moving within your agency until they're on board, that's who I'm talking about. And not only do they need to be on board with youth engagement, you also need to come to a consensus about what that means, because there are a lot of differing definitions and perceptions about what youth engagement looks like. If you're looking to maintain a youth coalition, you need to authentically engage those young people in your agency goals, in completing activities from your scope of work, in doing data collection. You can't just contact them when a city council meeting is coming up. So having a youth coalition, of course, can be a lot of fun, but it's also work. And your staff time, your organizational values, and your budget should all reflect that. Maintaining a youth coalition isn't just something that you can pick up when it's convenient and then put down when things get busy. It really needs to be weaved into your broader organizational goals and your organizational mission. So that being said, if maintaining a full youth coalition is something that it doesn't really seem like your agency is able to do right now, There are other ways that you can incorporate youth work. So I did want to just mention that. For example, you can link up with another agency that already has a youth coalition, and you can provide that coalition with opportunities for their young people, like completing one activity or one project from your scope of work. And then their youth coordinator would do a lot of that deeper youth engagement and youth development work. Okay, and finally, before my time is up, I wanted to make an important note about being intentional about language. So we want to try and say youth or young people as opposed to calling them kids. I also want to note, please be conscious of saying things like, so-and-so agency is borrowing our youth, or we're lending out our coalition to that agency. The young people that we work with are not our property. We don't get to just lend them out. And this language is really disrespectful to anyone, but especially when you're working with youth from diverse communities, it's important to think about the impact that this type of language has from a historical context. So my 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I couldn't agree more. Fantastic. Muriel, I think you're back, right?
Yes, is my
Yay.
audio working?
Yes,
Yay!
you look fabulous.
Don't
Go
we
for
all
it.
just love Zoom?
Good job. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, and thank you. I just want to say thank you, Bonnie, for that warm introduction. My name is Muriel Gobea, pronouns she, her, ella, and I want to talk a little bit about sustainability and youth engagement. Every time I reflect back on my youth coalition years, I always think about what kept me coming back. Yes, the incentives were awesome, and I loved engaging with my community. But the one thing that always kept me coming back was that strong bond that I shared with my adult partner and that they established with me personally. I know not everyone in the room here has had the privilege to be part of a youth coalition, but I would love for you all to reflect back on your favorite teacher or coach, or even a youth pastor that you all worked with. Why did you feel that strong bond with them? And why did you continue to participate in activities that they were engaged in? I know we can all relate to the answer that they made us feel safe, heard, and validated. In this virtual world, it may feel impossible to build those connections with youth and sustain and establish our youth coalitions. But things that I have incorporated to some of my in-person and virtual coalitions are something that we like to call highs and lows. So we always start off our youth coalition meetings by checking in with everyone in the room, even myself. And we talk about our highs, which is something amazing and really good that happened throughout the week for the youth that they would love to talk about, or a low, something not so good that they would love to reflect on and possibly get some advice on. This really helps me connect with the youth, and it also helps them connect with me because I'm able to share about my personal things in life as well that I'm proud of, or something that didn't make me feel so good. So it makes them know that I'm a relatable person and that I also go through struggles just like them. And this also helps me connect and identify youth that may need some extra support after the meeting. So hearing their lows helps me identify who I'm going to privately message at the end of our meeting, or who I am going to privately message on Zoom and ask them to stay afterwards so I can have that extra time with them. Another small thing that helps is finding platforms that they're familiar with, like Instagram, and creating group chats where they're able to connect not only with each other, but you. I love being able to be reachable by the youth that I work with, because I don't want them to think that they can only have me for an hour every week or bi-weekly. And as I continue my youth work in the Central Valley, I strive to continue to create that validating environment that I craved for when I was a youth. And contrary to what a lot of people may believe, youth don't always join youth coalitions to be in the forefront of campaigns or speak at city councils. Youth all have different strengths, and it's important to be able to connect with them and help them identify these strengths. You may find out that some of these youth are passionate about art or social media or even music, and helping them identify their strengths to help lead either a sticker campaign or run your social media page. This really helps them connect with you and also connect with other youth and continue to come back. Because at the end of the day, finding ways to build a relationship with youth helps keep that retention going and youth coalitions growing. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you. And recovered beautifully after the Zoom issues. That's great. All right. I want to bring all three of our panelists back on. and we'll do some questions. Again, fabulous thoughts here. So I want to pick up, if I may, on one of the aspects that you mentioned, Nicole, I think as well, it was, or particularly Nicole, was the using the right words and use, and I think you mentioned pronouns as well. But how do you help establish that? How do you get into a situation, where it goes back to what we were asking in the earlier panel of trust, but you've got this youth coalition set, a youth group, and you want to maintain and keep them going. And like what I was saying earlier is, you don't just say, look at this curriculum, look at this ad, and move on. You have to keep going. And unlike an adult where it's, hi, how are you? Good, bye. We don't have time to chat. With young people, you need to talk to them. So how do you sustain that? How do you sustain it when I've got an agenda and I need to get this thing done? And then how do you also, it's kind of a two-part question, so maybe each of you do half of it. And how do you keep not only the right words, but the pronouns? You're all beautiful and saying, and I should say I'm she, her, but I'm also fine with they. How do you keep that going and have people know that space is safe for them, no matter what it is? So maybe one of you take a piece of that and go on from there.
Sure, I can answer a bit of that.
Thank you.
I think a great way in terms of using language that people prefer, language that makes people feel respected, is group agreements. And so when we do group agreements, we really go deep into these types of questions, as opposed to just kind of like the general be respectful. Okay, well, what does respect look like to you? What makes you feel respected? Because I have met young people who don't like to be called youth either. And so it's really specific to your group and the language that people like to be used about them. And you would be surprised the types of things that people say. So one of our group agreements is respond, don't ignore. And so that's also a step of creating a safe space, is people know that they can respond to others and they don't just have to be silent about issues that make them feel not respected.
I love that. Absolutely. Respect is the most important thing. It's funny. I've talked to some young, because we have our youth group, and my daughters, who are now almost 21 and 25, and they'll often say, at times I'll hear, I am a kid, or until now 21, 25, they're not, but when they were 19. So it's asking and knowing what they're used to and how important that is. Cynthia or Muriel, you want to take a second part of this? Maybe not, another piece to add.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and respond. I think that community agreements is definitely important. One of the things that we do on top of that is also reiterate those at the beginning, at the top of every single meeting. So it brings attention to it. So I think as adults and even young people struggle with pronouns as well. And knowing that those need to be respected, those are brought into the space every meeting, that we're going to and mistake, it's okay, we're going to acknowledge it, and then we're going to correct it, as well as coming to a space where you're establishing a sentiment where you're open to learning. And so knowing that in this environment, people are coming with different expertise and different backgrounds and different life experiences, and that we're here to learn from each other. And that includes adults in this space. And that also includes an agreement on behalf of the adults to check their adultism at the door and to make sure that they're checking those spaces when they're jumping into trying to be too kind of micromanaging in the space.
I love it. And I love the making mistakes. We all make mistakes. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and either move on or not if the conversation needs to keep going. But when it's done, then you move on. I think that's really good lessons. Mira, I'm going to address this question to you, if I may, which is building consensus on goals or not. And, part of the youth voice is also what the goals are of the group and where you're going to be moving towards. So what have your experiences been with building consensus or not? And what are your lessons there when you don't have consensus?
Yeah, I feel like definitely one of the things that we always do is validate what every single goal is and what every single objective is. And definitely every youth is very unique and very different, and they're all going to have different goals for not only the coalition, but for themselves. And one of the things that we do is we always come together and make sure that obviously we have a policy that we're working on for the community, but how do we incorporate also their needs? And how do we also make sure that their goals are met and that they're not only working on our objectives, but on their own? And of course, we do this through different activities. If someone is very passionate about poetry, like Marina mentioned in the video, we put together this poetry slam where every single youth was able to take on a lead, whether that be working on the flyer or emceeing the event, and making sure that, yes, we're going all towards the same goal of getting this policy met, but we're also along the way, we're making sure that all of their needs are met and all of their activities that they would like to complete are also getting done.
I love it. That is fantastic. Thank you. I think we have time for, let me check our timekeeper here, see if I have time for one more question. One more minute. Okay, so one more minute until we move on to audience questions. So let me do the same thing. Just if you guys can keep it to one sentence about, and if a participant or audience, if you go ahead and ask questions, that'd be fantastic. Go ahead and add your questions, but just one sentence. It could either be why you're doing this or best practices in keeping this going. So why don't I start with you, Nicole, please?
One sentence. I guess I'll just say the best way to maintain a youth coalition is through authentic engagement.
Beautiful. All right. Let's see. Cynthia, please.
I guess I'll say that it's important that we invest in homegrown leadership, and that starts with investing in young people.
Great. And Daisy? Or sorry, Muriel.
I will add, validation is key when working with youth.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and open it up to our audience. And I don't see anything in the Q&A, but I did see something in the chat. Well, first of all, by the way, all 6 of you, if you're not following the chat, have had some fantastic kudos out. So I hope you're seeing that. We did have a question. I'm going to read another of our group agreements is circle back. It's never too late to circle back to something that happened in the past that didn't sit well with you. As youth coordinators, Veronica and I practice this visibly, as well as our youth board, so they can see what that looks like. So it's less of a question, but a statement of circling back, and that concept of it, I think, is great. And somebody else said, I got you, as a term. So any quick comments on that idea?
I love that. I definitely agree. And I definitely personally feel like not only circling back about the work that we do, but also circling back on what's going on in the world. A lot of times we always do a quick check-in on our group chat with our youth, just to talk about things that are going on that don't practically have to do with our policy work, but just making sure that they're connecting with us in a safe space, that they're able to really share how they feel about current world things that are happening. Or I know recently there was the takeover of the Capitol, and they had a lot to say about that. And we were not expecting that, but just making sure that they had that space to share how they felt and making sure that we're hearing them was really important to them. And we were making sure that we made sure that their needs were met as well.
I love it. Cynthia, please.
Another thing that I would add is also previously talked about like what respect is. And I know that Nicole talked about it's really important to define respect. A big part of that is also kind of respecting each other's time. And so recognizing as adults that young people have sometimes a different timeline or need a different timeline than we're hoping to place upon them, and needing to be flexible to gauge and reflect, like when you have to take pause, when you have to make sure you're investing a little bit in the capacity building of young people, as well as actually just time in general, making sure your meetings work for young people and that it works for their time and not for your time, because their time is valuable just like yours is, and we need to be able to respect each other's commitment to jump into this space to work together. And so if that means moving your meeting from lunch when the young people can attend to maybe a 4 o'clock hour, then that's what needs to happen. As well as making sure that you're providing adequate breaks and check-ins along the way for young people, especially during this virtual time, to take those very much needed screen breaks, knowing that they're on Zoom most of the day.
Fantastic points. Fabulous. All right. Let's see. Any other thoughts on that? Just making sure we. So one last question. I don't see anything else in the chats or but let me ask this. How do you reach those who are most at risk or most impacted, both for getting them into your youth group and sustaining them, knowing the challenges, but also reaching other youth? So maybe somebody can quickly answer that. Go ahead, Muriel. Thank you.
Go. I'm like, I feel like I'm talking so much, but I can definitely take it. And one of the things that, of course, our program is heavily focused on rural communities. So we know the needs are really high in these communities because a lot of times there's not many resources for these youth and different activities for them to engage in. I've been there before. I grew up in a rural community, so I know what that feels like. And that has definitely helped me relate to the youth that are living in other rural communities, because I totally understand what it's like to be in high school, living in a rural community, being surrounded by fields of trees, of oranges and orchards. So I've definitely relate to that. So a lot of times I have that connection with the youth where we're able to just share our experiences living in these communities and connect with that. And that is a really big tool that has helped them come back. So it's definitely helped me in that way. And also, like Daisy mentioned, a lot of times you connect with one youth and then that youth brings on other youth when they have a really good relationship with you. Relating back to when I was in youth coalitions, I always, I remember bringing my friends along to participate in activities because I felt so passionate about the work that I was doing and the connection I felt with my adult partner.
Beautiful. That was beautiful. We're going to have to end, but that was a beautiful statement of way to end. And just want to thank all 3 of you and all 6 of you for bringing your insights and your thoughts and your passion in working with youth and for working with youth. And so thank you very much. And on that note, I'm going to transition back to my my daughter, I guess, Dr. Anna Sonk.
Thanks, Mom. And thank you. I mean, honestly, truly, thank you so much, Bonnie, for your keynote address and leading this discussion. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. You are exactly why we do what we do at NCPC, because you are on the ground, you're advocating, and you're making a huge difference. Thank you to the American Heart Association for co-sponsoring and bringing this to fruition. And thank you to all of you who are in attendance right now. I want to also provide you guys with a few links and resources so that you can keep on fighting the good fight. We have the NCPC website where we try to keep all the information up to date so that you guys have the tools that you need to do. Think of it as a repository for all of our advocates and community groups. The next slide, we have materials including videos as well as recordings from our webinars and information that other community groups would like to share. Definitely we can follow up with email so that you know when these materials are available. And last but not least, we have Dr. Halpern-Felsher's prevention toolkit, both for tobacco and cannabis. You can get to it from our website, as well as Stanford's website as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you in future webinars and more activities. Keep on fighting.
And Anna, I think we have one more slide of resources for everyone. Is that right? Alex, can you advance one slide? No. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Again, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will be in touch.